Hello, everyone, and welcome to EVTN News, your source for Catholic news. I don't want to say breaking news, but yeah, I don't have as many articles today just because I broadcasted not too long ago, just a few days ago, but I will get to the news that people want to hear. And I think, like, what do you call it? The sensationalist news is Francis Watch, but there hasn't been a whole lot to report. Although the Vatican, I don't, I don't really believe them, but they did say that um, Francis could be discharged soon. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really not really following it very closely. Just kind of as people are talking about who's going to be the next pope. Um, I have my ideas, but I'm not going to discuss that extensively. But what I will discuss is things that are actually happening right now. And there's some news coming out of France. So, in recent years, participation in the Holy Mass in the Archdiocese of Tours has increased significantly. According to statements by Archbishop Vincent Jordi, the president of the Commission for Catechesis and Catechumenate for the French Episcopal Conference, the number of faithful attending Mass in Tours has doubled in 4 years. Latin Mass, that is. Archbishop Jordi described the increase in faithful attending Mass in the Latin Rite as a traditionalist phenomenon, which he claimed originated from the virus crisis in 2020. He attributed this growth to anxiety among people and a retreat unto oneself. The prelate also suggested that participation in the traditional Mass has been used by many faithful as a form of protest against restrictions and even state institutions. I'll say, yeah, I mean, um, I think any bishop who sees the increase in attendance in the Latin Mass and doesn't take a look in the mirror, what are you doing? Like, why are you even bishop? Like, why don't you just quit? If you don't look at yourself and see what you're doing wrong and why these people are going there, instead of blaming them and calling them names and oh wait, who did that? Francis. Oh, um, instead of being a jerk about it, why don't you look at yourself and see why you're doing things wrong and what you can improve on? Um, what stands out is Archbishop Jordy's attitude towards this ecclesial reality. He distinguishes between fundamentalists, which are the SSP, which is what he calls the SSPX, and traditionalists, which is the FSSP, a categorization that reflects a very critical view of both these communities. Furthermore, the prelate does not hesitate to issue warnings to the FSSP priest within the interview that he gave, openly declaring that he is ready to take punitive measures, or as has happened in other French dioceses. The Archbishop said, I have discussed this Mass several times with Pope Francis. So, what a jerk. What a jerk. Um, may you be quickly replaced. As for all these Francis bishops, no surprise. And as the masses shrink, the numbers still increase in the Latin Mass, that is. Um, all right, the Francis bot, because it's not, we're not sure if Francis is actually running the show. So the Francis bot has appointed on March 6th Angel Roman Irigoras, age 56, as the bishop of the Diocese of Albacete, Spain. He was the Episcopal vicar of the Diocese of Alcalá de Henares. InfoVaticano.com describes the new bishop as a man of markedly social nature and allergic to clerical clothes. And he is one of those priests who never took off his jeans and plaid shirt. Now, for the first time in his life, he'll have to go to the store to buy priestly clothes. Well, I don't think he can buy them at the store. but he'll have to obtain that priestly clothes. But I don't even know. He might just wear street clothes as a bishop. Um, and even though he was a vicar of a diocese, he wore casual clothes even to official meetings at the prior diocese. So this is what they're getting: street clothes priests. So there you go. You want the smell of the sheep? Oh man. Is anyone else sick of the synodal church? All right. Oh, and of course, the posturing for the next pope is fully underway. Speaking to the Catholic Herald recently, the anti-Latin Mass Cardinal Roche fielded a question about the numbers of young Catholics flocking to Latin Mass while having to deal with his restrictions on it. He said, "Of course, it is good that people want to be part of the church, and there is no reason why they cannot. There is nothing wrong with attending the Mass celebrated in the 1962 Missal. Um, this has been accepted since the time of Pope John Paul II, Benedict, and now Francis." Okay, and this is the quote from Roche. He said, "There's nothing wrong with attending the Mass." So he's doing a complete about face, completely reversing his previous thoughts on the Latin Mass. Um, so what is, I don't know. I think it's probably an attempt to I don't know, make himself more electable as the next pope. I don't think he has any friends though, and I think that he will get one vote, and that is from himself. If you are allowed to vote for yourself, I don't know. He continued arguing that Francis' restrictions on Traditionis Custodes show that the Latin Mass is not the norm. So, if it's restricted and it's not the norm, then uh, how are you saying there's nothing wrong with attending the Mass? Because he said, for very good reasons, the Church, through conciliar legislation, decided to move away from what had become an overly elaborate form of celebrating the Mass. So we have to dumb it down. Um, we have to dumb down the Mass if we want to celebrate it. Okay, that makes a ton of sense, right? No, I don't think so. That's why people are going to Latin Mass. The English Cardinal commented on the numbers of devotees of the traditional Mass as being in reality quite small, but some of the groups are quite clamorous. They are more noticeable because they make their voice. So even more of an egregious disgrace that Roche cracked down on it. If the numbers are small, then why would you bother anyone? Why wouldn't you just leave them alone? He said, "I often hear people say Cardinal Roche is against the Latin Mass. Well, if they only knew that most days I celebrate Mass in Latin because it is a common language for all of us here. It is the Novus Ordo Mass in Latin. I was trained as an altar boy until the age of 20, serving the Tridentine form." Okay, so he uses a completely irrelevant point. He celebrates a Novus Ordo in Latin. Yay! So you don't celebrate the Latin Mass. So it's just a lot of nonsense that he's spewing here. And, like, I don't think anyone actually believes him. And isn't that kind of sad? Okay, meanwhile, there are French Catholics who have been protesting outside of the Archbishop's Palace in Paris against France's brutal crackdown on their Mass, their Latin Mass. And they had an interaction with a woman who said, "But what is Holy Mass?" And they answered simply, "The Holy Mass is not only the Mass in Latin, as the enemies of peace like to caricature it. The Holy Mass illustrates our faith in the real presence of our Lord who renews his sacrifice at the altar. The lady continued, "You're right. Every time I go to the Novus Ordo, I feel like I'm going to a meeting, which is always different and consists mainly of chatting. I have to go to Toulouse soon. Do you think I'll find a mass there?" And their response was, "With the internet, you won't have any problems." So it doesn't matter. And there's a woman who is intrigued by what they had to say, and maybe that's what the idea is. Oh, it looks like I'm just going through Gloria TV here. Gloria TV's articles. These ones aren't linked, by the way, in the description. Okay, so it looks like the Canadian regime has decided to close the National Advisory Commission on Residential Schools, Missing Children, and Unmarked Graves. The reason why several churches in Canada were burned to the ground by arsonists. They made it up. That's why. That's why they're closing the investigation. So there you go. They fabricated the whole story, and Francis went to Canada and apologized for nothing. So great. Okay, traditional Catholics are increasing in numbers. The Novus Ordo in Latin is not the Latin Mass. He's a clown. Okay. And clown mass. Kind of like Parent Ryan, SJ. Hope he's holding out pretty well. So I don't actually have a lot of opinions on what's going on with Francis. I don't know, and I don't think too many other people know. But who really knows? And I'm just kind of scrolling here. Oh boy. Okay. Did you guys see this story? It's possible that Zanchetta may be at the same facility as Francis. Parent Ryan SJ is on Twitter. You have to go to Twitter to see Parent Ryan SJ. He actually kind of had a meltdown whenever Trump was elected. That was pretty good. As did all the far leftists. That was, yeah. Oh, I did see. I saw something just recently, and I may be able to expand on this. There was a woman in. Oh, is this? No. Yes. There is a woman who is on her way to D.C. So McElroy is being installed as the Archbishop of D.C. And he ignored let's just call it an assault, an instance of clerical assault on a woman, and he ignored this, and she is going to DC to ask Trump to investigate the USCCB, and I don't know if this will lead to anything, but it kind of does give us hope a little bit, because I want to see those documents from DC released. I mean, McCarrick, the parent, the parent. No, the McCarrick story has not been, or the McCarrick story has been buried, and the Vatican released their, I guess, investigation into McCarrick, and it didn't implicate any of the Francis favorites like Supich, Tobin, Worrell, McElroy. You get the idea. And a lot of people were wondering about that, and then McCarrick, friend McElroy, was now promoted to DC to continue the cover-up. And I think that we'd all like to see that investigated, but it doesn't. I don't know. There's not really any reason to be optimistic that will happen, but who knows? Who really knows? Okay. But Catholics are demanding for investigations, so that's a start. Okay. Um, Not on Twitter. Okay. Yeah, well, you're not missing out on much, but if you are on Twitter, go to Parent Ryan SJ's account and follow him. I have a Twitter too, you know. um, I don't post as much as the e-priests though, so yeah, you're not going to get a whole lot of posting from me, but I try to share the stories that I think are pretty relevant, and especially I'm going to actually post a video clip of one I did just a few weeks ago that no media really, I don't think any of the media picked up on it. Bishop Robert Casey, auxiliary bishop of Chicago, was promoted to the Archbishop of Cincinnati, so he never was in charge of even a diocese, and now he's managing an archdiocese, which is in and of itself highly questionable, um, definitely concerning. And he was a director of Casa Jesus for at least a few years, which was a Hispanic priest recruiting organization. And those priests, they seem to be into men. In fact, it was shut down for because of a priest who was looking at things on his computer, and which are highly illegal, and that's why the organization was shut down, but not before there were numerous instances of LMNOP activity. So, just a completely compromised organization, and this guy was in charge of it. And I can't believe that the media haven't picked up on this. I mean, it's really, really a shame on the Catholic media. They're chasing clicks by, doing a daily, or well, not even daily, like multiple times a day Francis watch. And so you're just chasing clicks for nothing, for no news. It's like, okay, I'm watching grass grow. There's been, the Vatican gives a ambiguous update. Oh, how do we interpret this? Well, you're having actual, like, you're having actual perv bishops appointed in the United States, and you're not even reporting on it. Just appalling. The media's not even doing their job. So that's why you got to come here. What's your Twitter? Same name at YouTube. Yeah, just search John the Son of Thunder on Twitter. It's JTSOT1 at JTSOT1, but you can search John the Son of Thunder. You'll find me. It's the same logo on Twitter as it is on YouTube. I don't have much to say about that because if you follow me on Twitter, I don't. You'll see a few stories before I talk about them on YouTube, but it's not gonna. if I'm the only person you're following, then you're not gonna spend a lot of time on Twitter, which is probably a good thing. I mean, honestly, I like sports, and I have a different Twitter account for sports, and I spend a little bit of time depending on what season it is and what kind of things are happening. But you know, it's good. It's good for what you want to use it for. But if it becomes it's not a good. And Twitter's not a good place for debates. It's not a good place to call out the heretics, because the heretics just kind of dig in, and it's really sad that there are people on Twitter that claim to be Catholic who are critical of Catholic practices. Some of them are, raging leftists, and I'll end up getting aggravated with all the nonsense. I don't need that. Well, you can also block people who have really cringe takes. There's a lot of e-priests on there that are really terrible. They just have really terrible takes. And I just wonder about the e-priests. I wonder, are they in charge of a parish? And if they are, why are they I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong for a priest to have a Twitter account, especially if they just post like quotes from the saints or something. It's fine. Um, but I think some of these priests, though, they just go on and they have long conversations on Twitter and they respond, they argue with people all the time. And how are you how are you managing your parish if you're just arguing with people on Twitter all day, or you're just posting really stupid cringe takes? I think there are some video game priests on Twitter. Um, yeah, it's just really cringe. So um, yeah, it can be a good place. It can be a bad place. I don't know, but yeah, I don't. And again, like I said, I had Francis fatigue. I don't want to talk about Francis news. I just think these Catholic media sites are hyping everyone up and they're just getting clicks, and who cares? I'm not gonna do that. Now I do have a plan in place to talk about the legacy of Francis. Um, I do have some ideas for that. I do have some ideas for who's going to be the next pope, but again, I think I did a video on this 3 or 4 years ago, who's going to be the next pope, and it's kind of irrelevant now because in just a few years things change, and there's a whole new set of cardinals. A lot of cardinals have basically been forced out of the vote because they turned 80 years old. One name to watch is Cardinal Sarah. Now, I don't think he has a chance of being elected pope, although that would be kind of nice. But he would be a leading voice, a leading advisor to many in a conclave. He turns 60 in or 60. He turns 80 in June. So he will not be eligible to vote, and I guess if you're not eligible to vote, you can't go into the Sistine Chapel and have the discussions. I think you can have like the pre-discussions, like you can discuss things before that. And McCarrick was very influential in the election of Pope Francis. So he talked to the people after the votes took place, but no Pope was elected, and which I think is illegal. But I mean, McCarrick, if you know McCarrick, you know he's not concerned about the law in any regard. And so Cardinal Sarah would be a good, what do I say, like a he would be a leading voice in a conclave because this is it. This is it for him. This would be his last vote. So I hope things turn out. I hope he's able to vote for the next pope. And if he is, I think people would listen. I don't know that they would necessarily take his advice, but I think having him there would be better than not having him there, let's just say. All right, so this has been EVTN News. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.